So our job is to use data to understand how a business website is underperforming. And so we analyze the site, we analyze the data, we query users, we query salespeople and sales reps, and come up with a list of ideas for improving the performance of a site. For an e-commerce site, that's sales. For a lead generation site, that's the number of leads that you're generating, quality leads. And then we use a combination of user testing and A/B testing to prioritize and refine those ideas, and then ultimately with the A/B tests to find out which ideas are going to improve things and by how much. And by improve things, I mean increase revenue, increase leads.
What role has innovation played in the development of it?
Well, that's a very interesting question. So we have this one area of innovation that makes conversion sciences possible, and that is Moore's law applied to marketing. So with the advent of electronics, there are a couple of things that are making user testing and data gathering tools easier. Number one is sensors that we can use our cameras, that we can use cell phones to understand the context and use those to do testing with panels of people that we otherwise wouldn't have reach for. And the other is the growth of the cloud. So the cloud is an incredibly inexpensive way of hosting lots of data. So entrepreneurs are out there creating tools that allow us to bring people in, look at the components of our designs, mock-ups, wireframes, copy bodies, images, and help us understand what is going to work during the design process. We don't have to wait until we launch. So the innovation that I'm most excited about is that technological innovation. The innovation that is following that is marketers who are doing science, marketers who have a experimentation mindset as a part of their campaign development. And this is very exciting and it's a challenge. There are lots of um, uh, schools and training for data scientists, and that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about someone who understands how to evaluate data, how to collect data, how to make decisions based on the data they're collecting, and integrate that into their design process. So we have this constantly experimenting design process rather than collect a whole bunch of data, read all the personas and the marketing studies, and then make a whole lot of assumptions as we go through positioning, copy, images, wireframing, design, UX, and wait till we launch before we find out how we did.
How has the development of social media platforms over the last decade changed that exercise in terms of that linkage, that driving of traffic to websites and whatnot?
For me, the most striking thing is their use of data. So, as an advertiser, I can go onto Facebook and I have an immense capability of targeting. I can target based on taking an email list, uploading it, and asking Facebook to find another 100,000 or another million people that have similar interest demographics that look like the people that are on that list. So if I have a list that I know is qualified prospects, Facebook can put me in front of other people on Facebook that are like that. And they provide quite a bit of analytics that we can use in the analysis. So um, Facebook is a challenge. And so you're only going to be successful on Facebook if you're experimenting. You've got to try a number of different ads and find the right landing experiences that support those ads. Otherwise, you're going to flail. So, as an advertiser, I think social media is number one, giving us access we've never had before, relevant access, not spray and pray access. And it's going to make marketers have to embrace this experimentation culture and become scientists. Everyone should have their lab coat, in our opinion. So when AdWords came on, we had this period of trying to understand how to adjust our bids and what words are working right and what landing experiences we needed to have, and then using chicken feet to divine what Google's algorithm is. Uh, AdWords is getting very expensive as a advertising medium, so it's harder to get the acquisition cost down to support that. Facebook comes on the stage, much cheaper to generate the clicks, better targeting, but Facebook is interrupt advertising as opposed to search, which is intent driven based on the keywords that are entered. So it's a different animal. But what we are finding out is that with some diligent front end work, some experimentation, yes, Facebook can be brought to be as effective as paid search advertising. Absolutely. A lot of organizations are now have these big data initiatives in which they're saying we need to collect the data that comes naturally out of the services we offer, comes naturally out of the customer and prospect outreach that we're doing, and comes naturally out of the purchases that we're generating, put them into a warehouse so that we can start asking questions. Right now, the thing that we're discovering is that is siloed. So even us, who are a team that can come in and start using that data to make good decisions about what a campaign should be doing, targeting, how it should be presenting itself, and who it should present itself to, we have trouble accessing that data. So I think that those problems, I hope that those problems will be fixed at some point. In the meantime, though, the organizations that are using this data well are learning the tools to generating it, using their ad hoc methods to store and aggregate that. And it does really require that at almost all levels, the P&L owner, the UX person, the designer, the copywriters and brand managers, the product managers, and then the managers that manage those functions all need to have an understanding of experimentation. So that when this data does become available, number one, they know what to ask for, they know how to grade what they're getting, and they'll already have the muscles necessary to start applying it to their campaigns.
The mobile phone now provides us with a level of granular contextual data that we have not seen before. It seems to me that's perhaps both an opportunity and a challenge.
The inquisition portion of it versus the interaction portion of it. So um, we can use these big data silos when they're finally plugged into our systems to provide personalized interactions. And so they can draw from the data streams they're getting from a visitor who's coming at that point. But they're applying it to that touch point, to that experience. And I think that's the distinction. We can learn amazing things about what we should say to uh, our prospects. Um, and eventually we'll be able to drive custom messages to those guys. But it's really at the touch point that we're collecting a kind of a different, that's where the context really does tell us what we should be doing. The challenge for us is this: when a client has a personalization capability, someone who's looking at these touch points saying, oh, this person's coming from a mobile phone in a certain context, or they're coming on a certain from a certain browser, which gives us indications about some socioeconomic issues, Mac user versus PC user, those sorts of things. We have the opportunity to present a customized message, but the challenge is, what is that message? Just because our personalization tool is reporting that someone's at the top of the funnel, does that mean we only offer them informational um, devices, lead magnets, in order to generate those leads? If somebody's at the bottom of the funnel, do we only talk about discounts? And what we're finding is what's intuitive is often wrong. So it has to be married with either a testing program in which you have a number of people coming from those segments and find out which is going to generate the most revenue or the most leads for you. Or you have some sort of an AI capability that is testing those things for you and finding the right combination of experience and message that is going to get them to stay, to buy, to interact.
Yeah, and getting them to stay, it seems to me, is often a challenge beyond kind of that initial use of social media to raise awareness about a new product or service or new opportunity. And then, what is the experience once they click and they are there? Are they going to stay? Is it worth them staying there
Yeah.
with this large competition for their time?
Yeah. Well, the things that got us into marketing, those storied campaigns that got us into marketing, the Think Different campaign from Apple and the Dove Real Beauty campaigns, the things that got us excited, those were pretty bold, big steps. And most marketers don't have the freedom to take those big, bold steps unless they have a safety net. And that's where the experimentation comes in. So if I have an amazing idea and my first thought is, I could never sell this to management because, the old design way says I'm going to come with the idea, fill out the campaign, finish it, launch it, and I've already spent my budget. So if I take too big a risk, I have egg on my face. Now that we can experiment, we can actually get bolder, we can get bigger, we can take some of those risks because we're doing it with user testing and small experiments as we go. And here we're going to be able to find those knock it out of the park ideas that otherwise never would have seen the light of day. And this is, for me, very exciting because I also got into this because um, I love those big ideas. I love taking risks, but I love coming up with something that is unique and industry changing. These are the tools. The tools I've been talking about are this is the way we provide a safety net for ourselves, that we're not taking our career in our hands because we're betting on a great idea that we have.
I'm also hearing a lot about location as it relates to artificial intelligence, as it relates to the Internet of Things, and the fact that these messages that marketers are creating can now meet people where they are with these interactive devices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a very exciting area. It has some amazing implications. The fact that it's now really easy for people to speak to us, for us to interact in a campaign with someone where the initial contact was generated through voice command is very exciting. Being in context of somebody being out of something and having a device on the refrigerator that allows them to order the butter that they've just run out of, and the data that's being collected through the home devices, it provides an incredible opportunity, and it's a lot. And there's two things. Number one, do we have to be data scientists as well as marketers in order to utilize that data? And number two, we need diversity in the experimenter community because these devices can be used to manipulate rather than persuade. We want to persuade, not manipulate. Um, so the more people we have that take on experimentation culture, the more diversity we have, I think it will ensure that we have a higher ethical bar of people who are using this data.
For my students in this forthcoming class on entrepreneurship, what what should they be learning right now that is vital to their success when they graduate?
Great question. So, pay attention in the statistics class. So, the statistics class is going to talk a lot about business, but you just need some basic statistics to be able to understand if the data you're using to make decisions should be given full weight. Like an A/B test is usually a very well structured test that you can say, okay, we know that this solution is better, all the way back to collecting qualitative or panel oriented quantitative data. But even those sorts of experiments you can set up to give you a more A/B testing sort of a result in the way that you design your panels, your surveys. So pay attention in statistics. Um, you're going to need those languages to speak with the people who are really pulling the levers, dialing the knobs that you're going to be using. Beyond that, don't let the the data trend. It's not going to go away. Scare you away from getting excited about the creative part of the job because I think that this makes us more creative. And I think that you should probably see if you can find some sort of artificial intelligence training because a lot of data scientists are going to be replaced by AIs in the next 5 years, shortly after they get their degrees and certifications. It's going to be the creative plus data where I hope marketers and product managers and business owners are, that we're going to see that continuing interaction of human and machine learning. And it's very exciting. It can help you make decisions much faster. But you need to be able to speak that language.
Do we still need to do more work in the industry in coming to grips with those age-old issues that come out of social science reliability, reproducibility, statistical controls. In other words, this really critical consuming of data. There's so much data. It seems to me people sometimes don't stop to really evaluate it.
Yeah, so it's the stopping and evaluating. One of the impressions people have of using data is, okay, I'm going to collect a whole bunch of data, and then I'm going to set aside a certain part of my week to go in and look at the data like the matrix and discern insights from it. Now there might be a piece of that, but where you'll use it on a day-to-day basis is I'm writing a subject line for an email. This is the third in my autoresponder series, and I've got several ideas. I've got 4 or 5 ways I could go with this. Can I go find some data that will help me make a decision? So I can go and pull the last year's emails and look at similar subject lines and see what their click-through rates were to give me some guidance as to what might work best with this audience. Or I can take those and in a manner of 15 to 30 minutes, pound out a real quick survey, put that up into the cloud, have 25 or 50 people come and look at the different options and see which one communicated the best. And the design of those surveys, and we're talking about literally this can be done in an afternoon sitting at your desk with the tools we have. And the design of those surveys is really where your data intelligence and understanding of how to evaluate data is going to come into play. So don't see data as we've got this resource and I've got to sit down and use it. Go to it on a daily basis to answer questions. Which headline do I use? Which subject line? What images are going to work best? Should I have long copy or am I going to be better if I have a short copy on this particular page? Does that make sense?
Sure. Is there a reason in your mind why email has had such staying power as kind of the killer app of all apps and all of this?
Because we still use it to drive our day. The majority of us will say, we'll look at our calendar and see what's on our calendar. We don't have anything till 2 o'clock. What am I going to work on next? We're less likely to go to an organized, prioritized task list than to open email and see what folks have for us to do today. And so I think that is why email continues to be so effective, even despite all of the claims of its death for 2 decades now.
You've mentioned Facebook. Are there other places that marketers expect going forward are going to be the places to reach people?
Well, so it is kind of a moving target. Instagram is probably the next frontier. They're owned by Facebook. Um, my experience is anecdotal, but Pinterest has proven to be a bit of a challenge in terms of getting conversions. Lots of eyeballs. We're not doing a very good job with landing experiences there, and I know that there are many folks who are just monetizing Pinterest out the wazoo. Um, we kind of let our clients guide us, and so those are the places. Right now, most of our clients are just now figuring out Facebook. A synergy between Facebook and YouTube is happening in that Facebook is emphasizing video so much. YouTube is that's its native content, and so I think I'm hearing more anecdotally again more interest in building YouTube for those organizations that are good at video.
From a marketer's perspective, are the best platforms by definition those in which you have the best data, the best dashboards, the best insights?
Well, that's a good question. So we couldn't really figure Facebook out if they didn't provide us the data that we needed. If they didn't make it very easy for us to launch 4 or 5 different ads, see which ones are generating the clicks, isolate those, and then come up with 4 or 5 different landing experiences for those. Without the data, we'd be shooting in the dark. Ad sales would not be as good at Facebook, so they're incentivized to do that. So I would say no. I don't see how you can advertise digitally without being very conversant in analytics and in experimenting.
In the long run, this is the problem of traditional kind of television, cable, newspaper, media,
Mm-hmm.
compared, the kind of advertising that they sell and have sold traditionally just doesn't stack up against the tools we have on the digital side now.
Yeah. Well, and I would be so bold as to say that Netflix is likely to be overthrown by a similar model in which advertising is allowed. Maybe Amazon will move into that space because they do support advertising, but advertising of people that are already on the Amazon network selling products. So they're in a unique position to open up the data and allow advertisers to get really good at interacting with Amazon's audience, either through the website or through their instant. They're investing in shows just like Netflix is. Likewise, on the radio side, I've not advertised on Pandora, but no one's brought it to me, so I assume that they don't have a very good analytics platform that allows me to try multiple messages and get feedback on that and refine what I'm doing. And I think the the company that comes along exposes that kind of analytics to the advertisers and matches that model is going to be the next king killer, killing a Spotify or a Pandora or what have you. Well, we covered quite a bit, and I think we really, from my standpoint, hit home on the most important point is marketing is every campaign is an experiment. We don't launch anymore. Every campaign is experiment. And if we can embrace that experimentation culture, we have the tools, we have the data. We just have to sit down and ask questions that we can answer with data.